Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be going live finally to talk about the Saturn in Aries transit. I tried to do this about two times already and it didn't work. We had some technological problems, but I'm happy to see that this time it is working well. We can talk all about Saturn entered Aries already. It did that on May 25th. So maybe now already for about 6 days, you have felt a shift in energy. And hopefully today we can talk about the shift of energy. So you know also what things to look out for. And the reason I love doing this live as well is because we can have a chat about this. It's a live, so you can drop your questions in the chat, and we can get into some more specific scenarios or into some more specific questions that you might have about the transit. Um, and in today's live, we'll go through the dates. We'll go through Saturn as a planet. We'll go through Saturn in Aries and what that means in general. And then, of course, we'll get into each of the rising signs. Something that I love to do in these lives is also to talk about the rising sign first of the people that are here. So if you're here, if you're watching, drop in the live chat your rising sign, and we'll make sure to get to yours first. Okay, so Saturn in Aries. So as I shared, Saturn has already entered Aries. It did that on May 25th, 2025. And Saturn will stay in Aries up until April 13th, 2028. During that time, it will go retrograde 3 times. It will go retrograde actually fairly quickly. It will go retrograde already on July 13th of this year. And it will stay retrograde up until November 28th of 2025. And for part of this first retrograde period, Saturn will retrograde so far back that it also enters Pisces again. So this year, you might feel like the Piscean themes that you were dealing with in the last 2.5 years might come back up again because of that retrograde of Saturn back into Pisces. Saturn also has 2 other retrograde periods while it is in Aries: July 27th, 2026, up until December 11th, 2026, and August 9th, 2027 to December 24th, 2027. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn a bit. Saturn is a planet, and I think if you're somebody that is aware of astrology, that follows astrology, you would know that Saturn has quite a bit of a fearful discourse around it. And that is because Saturn is a planet of limitations. I think as a society, we tend to look at limitations as something bad, something that is not. We don't like to be limited. We're all about freedom. I joke all the time as an Aquarius with my boyfriend, like, don't tell me what to do. I'm an Aquarius. I determine what I want to do myself. But there is actually also something powerful about having limitations. When we have limitations, we can more clearly define who we are. If we have the limitation of a gender, we have some type of a definition of, okay, I am this, not that. If we have a limitation of our religion, again, we have an even more clear definition of I am this, not that. And it helps make this sort of definition of who am I? Who is Emmy? Who is, who are you? Helping you define that a little bit more clearly so that you have a bit more of a structure of, okay, how do you describe yourself? How do you exist in this world? And because of these limitations, and because of Saturn, we can also see reality a bit more clearly. Saturn is not the type of planet where we're like under illusion. We think everything's peachy and we are, in our la la land being delusional. Saturn is very much the type of planet that will really show you you cannot become rich overnight. Most people that are overnight successes are not actually overnight successes. That person that you aspire to, actually, they have a lot of other things that they struggle with. Those relationships that you see that you think are perfect and you're like, oh my God, that I want that for myself. Saturn will show you that actually it's can be difficult and it can be hard work to keep a strong, beautiful relationship. And as a result, when Saturn shows us that, when it shows us reality, when it maybe even shows us reality for ourselves, oh, you think you're doing well at work, but actually your performance is not that good. When we actually see reality clearly, it might not feel good. It might make us feel down. It might make us feel a little bit discouraged. But it also gives us the opportunity to respond and the opportunity to fix that, to change that. Right? If we don't know that we need to show up at work differently, if we don't know that our performance at work is not going so well, we also don't know that we need to do something differently. We don't know that we need to start showing up earlier. We don't know that we need to start speaking up in meetings more. So that's also the gift of Saturn. While it can feel limiting, while it can feel like, oh wow, this is quite depressing. I'm seeing reality and things are not as peachy and rosy as they appear to be. It's also giving you the opportunity to respond to change it. And when we see this sort of reality, when we see how things really are, we might start to feel maybe a bit fearful. We might start to feel a little bit like wishful, like, oh, I just wish things were easier. I wish things were different. But Saturn really asks us as a planet, Saturn really says, enough about wishes, enough about fears, enough about how you're feeling. This is the reality. And if you want to change it, you need to do something differently. Even if you wish it was different, even if you're afraid to change it, let's do something about it. Let's put our feelings aside. Let's do something about it practically. This is not the planet where we meditate or we put our positive thinking caps on to solve our problems. This is the planet where we respond with self-discipline. We respond with patience. We realize that it's not the first time we show up to work on time that all of a sudden our boss is going to give us a promotion. Realizing that things take time. And to really respond with practical strategies. To really respond with a list of sub-goals, a list of how are we actually going to achieve this? And really focused on ourselves. This list of to-dos is not, change this person or, make somebody else do something else. Saturn and the practical strategies it asks of us is all about ourselves. What can we do? What can we put into effect to change our reality? Can we get up earlier? Can we start working out? Can we change how we eat? Improve our diet? Can we start showing up as a better partner? What does that even look like? Saturn will even go further and ask, what does that look like? What does it mean to be a better partner? And to get really, really concrete, maybe it means every Sunday I buy my partner flowers. Maybe it means before night I give my partner a kiss. Saturn says, let's get practical, let's get tangible. And therefore, Saturn says all of these things that we need to do are in the real world. They're not, again, dreaming about something different. They're not about wishing for something different. Um, it really has to be a sort of an action in this world. And as a result, if we do this at the end of this transit, at the end of Saturn in whatever house it is for you for the next 3.5 years, if you do this work, you will feel mature at the end of it. You will feel dignified and you will have more self respect for yourself because you have shown up to a challenge, you have shown up to reality, and you have seen the type of respect and power that comes to you after you have put in some hard work and after you have seen results of that. It's this idea of going out for the day, working hard, being a farmer that's really toiling at the land, harvesting crops, planting crops. And when you come home at the end of the day, you might be tired, you might be exhausted, but you stare out of the window onto this ripe land, onto the work, the manifestations of your actions. And you see, wow, I feel proud. I have done a good, honest days of work. And even though I'm tired, I feel sort of satisfied internally. So, because Saturn is a lot about time, do ask yourself with this transit, and we're going to get into the specific area in a moment. In this area, what continues to take up my time, even though I have outgrown it? What makes me behave in ways that are still a bit childish, is still a bit actions that are not giving me the outcomes that I wish for? We use this idea of your workplace. Is there something that's taking up your time, like daydreaming at work? It's taking up your time. You have outgrown it. It's time to do something different. It's time to start actually speaking up in meetings instead of daydreaming. So, really, really pay attention to what is taking up your time and what is a more practical, more grown-up thing that you can replace it with during this Saturnian transit. And then on the other side, if we do not do well with the Saturnian transit, if we let it keep us disappointed, discouraged, we will feel stuck. We will feel like we have no energy. We will feel sorry for ourselves. And we will come out on the other side of this Saturn and Aries transit feeling like we have been defeated in that area, feeling like we have taken on greater responsibility, we're more mature, but it's not done in a pleasurable way. It's not done in a way that feels aligned with us. For example, if we're having this in our house of relationship, this transit, we will come out of that Saturn in Aries transit, Saturn through our seventh house transit, feeling as if, okay, yes, my relationship sure is more mature, but I'm not happy about it. I actually feel stuck. This relationship doesn't give me any more energy. I actually am not even sure if I love my partner anymore. I actually don't even like the life I have for myself anymore. Our relationship is so mature and so boring and so, not something that fulfills me. And indeed, we might feel stuck. We might feel like we have no energy. And this can especially be the case if we are going through our Saturn return, and specifically our first Saturn return. Because the major theme of the first Saturn return is growing up. And what can happen with a lot of people with the first Saturn return is that it's so difficult. We see reality so clearly. We realize we cannot be Batman, which is what we dreamed of our entire life. We realize that we need to start thinking realistically. And we get so discouraged by this reality. We get so discouraged by the fact that we need to make money, the fact that we need to pay bills, the fact that our parents will not take care of us our whole life, that we might come out of our first Saturn return as somebody that is more adult, somebody that does have more responsibility, but we're not happy about it. We've stopped dreaming. We have built a life for ourselves that is so like so disengaged from the life that we dreamed about as a kid. None of that excitement, whatever it was about being Batman that we liked, was the freedom of flying, it was the power of helping other people. None of those traces of that childhood dream are in our life anymore. So therefore, with that first Saturn return, especially, there is the need that, Saturn asks of us, can we become adults? Can we really look at reality? Can we come to terms with the fact that we need to pay bills, with the fact that relationships don't just magically make themselves better? But how can we also do it while keeping a part of our dreams real? And if we have done that right, if we have figured out how to do that, we come out of our first Saturn return feeling like we're maintaining that sort of youthful intensity. We still have a passion for something. We still have a dream that we feel like we're pursuing. Maybe our dream is not as outrageous as it was before. We're no longer dreaming to be Batman. But maybe now we're dreaming of starting up a foundation that helps children in the world. And we still have that passion that helps us get out of bed, even though we know, hey, I'm going to have a lot of responsibilities today. In this foundation, I'm going to have to do a lot of difficult conversations. I'm going to have to pay bills. I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to face difficult Saturnian adult things, but I'm still pursuing that dream. I know it's not going to happen today. I know it's going to take me patience, but there is that fire and intensity. There's that mission, that inspiration in our life. And again, that's because our adult version reflects the visions of our youth. And I'm curious, drop in the chat if this is also true for your Saturn return, if you have gone through it. But I think it's definitely been the case for mine as well. Mine Saturn return was in Pisces, the one we just closed off. And there has definitely been this feeling of, okay, how can I maintain the dreams and passions of my youth into today, into what I do today, even if I might not be the artist that I once dreamed to be when I was a child, even though I pay my own bills and my parents don't provide for me anymore. How can I still maintain that? I'll quickly just touch on the second Saturn return, and then we'll get into Saturn in Aries. The second Saturn return is a little bit different. This one is a lot more about destiny. It's a lot more about realizing, hey, I'm not going to be here forever, facing that reality. When we were 27, 28, 29, 30, we faced the reality of, hey, I got to pay bills. In our second Saturn return, we faced the reality of we're not going to be here forever. Our lives are slowly but surely coming to an end. And what am I actually going to leave behind? For a lot of us, that sort of, destiny is about leaving behind, like a legacy of being known in the world for something, being world renowned for our work. But for others, it can also be much more about within our family. What are we leaving behind? What is our destiny there? So that second Saturn return definitely has a different flavor to it. So now Saturn in Aries, this is this transit that this whole life is around. If you have any specific questions about Saturn in Aries, drop them in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them. But Saturn in Aries specifically, you can think about us taking on these qualities of Aries and using them in this act of maturation. using selfishness in our act of maturation, using the setting of boundaries with others as us being mature, as us showing up in the world and saying, no more, I'm an adult. I look out after myself. I set boundaries. I act instinctively. I make something happen when I have that vision. I don't sit around. I am courageous and I face scary things. Um, Definitely with Saturn, when we face reality, we are going to be faced with things that we don't want to do, things that maybe sound boring, but also some things that are scary, like purchasing your first house, that's scary. Getting married is scary. Um, but especially with Saturn in Aries transit, which again, whichever house it's present in for you, we'll get that in a moment. It's all about being mature is about doing the fearful things. Being mature with the Saturn and Aries transit is about being courageous and doing it anyways. With the Saturn and Aries transit, being mature and being an adult means initiating, being a leader, not waiting for others to say, hey, we're going to go do this, or hey, at work, we're going to go do things this way. Or even in your relationship, hey, why don't we do this? The Saturn and Aries transit is going to ask you to stop waiting for others to lead you and start initiating, start being a leader, start leading the crowd instead of following it. Be the one to speak up first. With the Saturn and Aries transit, it's also going to ask us to be mature by fighting for what we care for. There's no longer this idea of, well, as long as I believe in it, that's enough. With the Saturn Aries transit, it's all about, if I don't say something, if I don't show up to that demonstration, if I don't speak my opinion while I'm at a party in a group where everybody is talking about something I don't agree with, then I'm not actually being mature. I'm not actually being an adult. I'm not actually facing reality. So we need to fight for what we care for. We need to be vocal about it. And again, as I said, we need to set those boundaries. Not being afraid to put ourselves first. And as a matter of fact, Saturn in Aries will say, if you want to become a real adult, if you want to really mature in the next 2.5 years, and to really make your dreams a reality, you need to be selfish. You need to put yourself first. So now let's get into the rising sign horoscopes. Again, as always, I'm happy to do the rising sign first for you. So therefore, drop your rising sign in the chat and I'll make sure to cover yours first. And of course, if you have any Saturn and Aries questions, also drop them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. That's the wonderful thing about these lives, is that we can indeed have more of a discussion about Saturn and Aries. Nice. So Joe, welcome. Let's start with your rising sign then. Let's start with Libra. Yeah, so Libra is probably going to feel this transit quite strongly, and that's because Saturn will be in an angular house for you. It will be in your 7th house of relationships. And whenever we see a planet transiting our angular houses, we can feel it much more strongly. And the reason for this is because our angles are in the angular houses, right? We have our ascendant, IC, DC, and MC. So for you, I would especially also take a look at exactly when Saturn will be crossing your DC, those dates might especially be important for you. You might find that a lot of those main themes, a lot of those strong um, restriction feeling that Saturn brings could come up around the time that Saturn is on top of your descendant. So basically, Saturn in your seventh house will ask you to be mature with your relationships. It will ask you to take a look if there are any actions that you do that are perhaps not serving your relationship in the way that you want it to serve it. Are you spending your time doing activities together with your partner that are maybe not aligned with how you want to feel together? One example could be that you want to feel more connected with your partner. Saturn is facing you with this reality when it comes into your seventh house, is facing you with this reality of, wait a second, I feel like my partner and I are drifting apart from each other. There comes that Saturnian feeling of maybe feeling defeated, feeling sad about this reality. But as I mentioned earlier, this is also an opportunity to act on it, to you see the reality, and now you have the gift of being able to respond to it. And Saturn will say, hey, do something about it, do something to change it. And you might have to take a look at, well, actually, when we come home from work, we're each on our phones, so we're staring at our TV. And Saturn might ask you to, speak up about it and to say, hey, shall we try something different? Shall we maybe tonight not look at the TV and have a little chat? Saturn is about the very practical, tangible things. So maybe you want to really bring, one of those like card decks that are sort of like a set of questions that you can ask with your partner to get to know them better. Something tangible like that might really help to buy that during this Saturn and Aries transit, and to use that together with your partner, because it's a structured type of approach that you can use with your partner. Another thing that Saturn might make apparent for you in the next 2.5 years is if you have a childish view of what makes a happy relationship. And a childish, I mean that with all respect, but sometimes we all have this feeling of like, well, a happy relationship means we never fight. A happy relationship means we spend 24/7 together. And this Saturnian transit might make you realize that actually that's not necessarily true. It might make you start to see happy relationship in a much more realistic way. And it might help during this time to also look for role models for relationships that you can take a look at and see, wow, okay, there are some very real parts of their relationship. They have arguments, they spend time apart from each other. Maybe they've gone through a separation in the past, but then they eventually come together. A relationship that's quite real, that doesn't pretend to be something it's not. But you can look at it and you can get inspired that it is actually quite a beautiful relationship. And it changes this maybe less mature way that you used to look at relationships. You might also really, so we said you might see the reality of how your relationship is. You might all of a sudden realize, hey, actually, I don't feel as close to my partner as I used to. But you might also become really aware of who you are as a partner. Before this transit, you might have felt like, well, I'm perfect as a partner. Like I'm always so considerate and loving. And Saturn might make you realize that actually you are, maybe you don't spend as much time with your partner, or maybe when you're tired at the end of the day, you become a little bit snappy at them. And vice versa, you might also become really aware of who your partner is. before the Saturn and Aries transit, you might have seen them as somebody that was, sorry, my hair is doing crazy things. You might have really seen them as somebody that was amazing and perfect. And Saturn might make you realize they also have their own issues. They're also human beings that get tired and get cranky. So Saturn will really bring sort of a clarity over your relationship. So all of this being said, it's a perfect opportunity to put a plan into action. It's a perfect opportunity to have some discipline into changing your relationship into something more mature, something more self-respectful towards yourself and towards your partner. Be mindful that it's not going to happen right away. Saturn asks us for patience. Saturn asks us to be realistic that good things take time. And because this is a Saturn transit in the sign of Aries, I want you to always also consider to be selfish with the time of the two of you. To be selfish if others try to come in and say, oh, do you want to hang out tonight, but you had a date planned with your partner, to really be selfish and set boundaries around that. To fight for your relationship, to make it as if this is the most important thing for you, and to defend this special time, this special, cocoon that the two of you have. And to be courageous with it. You are going to need to initiate with your partner that something needs to change. And that can feel scary. But Saturn says, hey, I know you can do it. I know you can be courageous and do this even though it scares you. I love it. Yeah. So you think that happy relationship is each of you doing your own thing. You learned that the hard way. Yeah. Yeah, clarity would be great. And I think with Saturn, the way we get clarity is really looking at what's being shown to us, even though it might hurt, even though it might be uncomfortable, really being aware of it and not being afraid of reality. And that would bring a lot of clarity for sure. I hope that helps, Joe. Okay, so I see Steph wants Virgo next, so let's do that. So for Virgo, Saturn will be in Aries in your 8th house, which is the house of our psychological workings, our psychological inner being. And Saturn will say that it's time to be mature with that area of your life. So what this might look like is Saturn might make it really clear to you what your relationship to death is. Do you perhaps view death as something that is childish? Are you scared of it? Do you avoid it? Or maybe on the other standpoint, do you think it's something that's not a big deal? You're like, oh, it's fine. And you maybe take the sacredness away from it. Saturn in Aries will make you quite real, or will make it really obvious to you what it is that you feel around this topic. And will make you question whether that's really mature. And because the 8th house also represents our intimate relationships, you might also find with this transit that you need to put in some hard work with intimacy. You might need to, you might start to see really clearly, actually, what is your intimate life like? And you might see that it might not be exactly how you wish it was, and that you might need to change something. Because the 8th house is also our mental health and psychology, like I said earlier, Saturn might also make it super clear that there was maybe a part of your psychology or something about your mental health that maybe you weren't aware of before that you can't ignore it anymore. It starts to be super clear. You need to pay attention to it. And Saturn will make it really clear how you are actually feeling. And therefore, with this Saturn in Aries transit, again, it's an opportunity to act on it. It's an opportunity to do something different. You see reality, you see things clearly, and it's time to take action and do it differently. It's time to practically address your mental health, maybe to sign up for therapy, to really set a routine of journaling, of dancing, of getting in touch with mediums. Maybe, the eighth house is the things unseen. And because Saturn is in the sign of Aries, you have to do this even though it's fearful. Even though you might be afraid to maybe sign up for some therapy, Saturn will say, we got to do it. We got to treat this as if it is war, and we got to go ahead and do it even though we're afraid. Because this is the eighth house, it's a lot of, like we said, death. We talked about our mental health. We talked about our intimate relationships. There can be a lot of things that are sort of like unseen or behind the closed doors, or things that are afraid to pin down. So do trust your instincts during this time. Saturn in Aries will say that sometimes our instincts, the first idea that we have about like, oh, okay, I think this is something I need to work on with my mental health. Follow that. Again, Saturn is in Aries, which is a very instinctual sign. So that might definitely help you during this time. Be selfish. Really be selfish with time that you have set for intimacy. Really be selfish with time you have set to work on your mental health and to improve it. And set boundaries so that you protect that time. Set boundaries so that you protect your mental health. If there are people that are really having a negative effect on it, set boundaries with them. And set boundaries around your intimacy so that you initiate, Aries, you initiate with your partner that, hey, let's try something different with our intimacy. Let's do it a different way. And you set boundaries around it. Maybe you have every first Sunday of the month that you have set for this new thing you're going to try, so that you're really structured, really practical, because we are talking about Saturn after all, and he asks that of us. So I hope that helps, Steph. If you have any other questions, just drop them in the chat. Nice. Happy to hear. Yeah. So you're already playing with meditation, journaling, and feeling. That's great. Yeah. I love it. And Angie says, hi, Angie. Good morning. Third decan Aries. Is this a time for Aries people to step back from friends who seem to have changed? I love it. Okay, let's talk about Aries. And then we can also answer your question while we talk about Aries. So for Aries, this is a really important time because Saturn is transiting your first house. And especially for you, you're a third decan Aries. So definitely when Saturn later in its transit, when it crosses over, I guess, your AC, definitely be mindful that these themes will come up around that time. And for you with Saturn in your first house, it will be asking you to reinvent yourself so that you can look at yourself with more self-respect and with more maturity. And definitely, when I look at your question, like, should Aries step back from friends who seem to have changed? I would say if hanging out with that friend, spending time, giving your energy to them is making you lose some self-respect, then definitely that could be something that Saturn asks you to do. However, if you feel like your friend having changed is requiring you to show up and to reinvent yourself into a person that's more mature, that into a person that is more in touch with reality, then this might be a call from Saturn to actually put in the hard work and to maintain that relationship. So let's see. I'll keep talking about Aries, and then hopefully this can clarify for you. So Saturn in your first house might make it sort of painfully clear the ways in which your identity is not aligned. Maybe it's the way you act. You maybe act quite shy, or you act quite, front and center, quite loud and big. And Saturn might make it clear that actually maybe that's not coming from the most respectful, mature place of you, that maybe that needs to change. It could be around the way you dress, that maybe you find out that you don't feel in the way you dress that you come off as somebody that can be respected, somebody that's mature, somebody that's worthy of taking up attention and space. It could be around the way you speak, that maybe you speak quite quietly and timidly, but actually you realize again that does not really show a clear, respectful image to others. And that also needs to adjust. So definitely, with your friend, if they have seemed to change, to have changed, and you might find that when you spend time with them, like when we spend time with our friends, we often start to pick up the same mannerisms. We often start to, maybe talk the same way, or, if they're somebody that loves to eat fast food and we're hanging out with them, naturally, we sort of start to do the same things. So if you find that in the ways that your friend has changed, and when you are with them, your identity, how you show up, how you speak, how you dress, what you eat, changes also in a response to them, changes in a way that you feel like, this is not really who I want to be. This is not respectful towards me. This is not mature. I don't like the way I don't like who I am when I hang out with this person. Then Saturn can say, okay, it's time to grow up. It's time to cut this person out of our life. Keep in mind that Saturn in Aries is all about being courageous and doing things we're afraid of. So that might be, you might be afraid to cut this friend out or to step back, as you have said. But Saturn in Aries says we got to do it. Another option could be that you also have a talk with the friend instead, right? To really share how you feel first. And again, it might feel fearful to do that, but Aries is all about initiating, taking the first step. So that might also be a really good way to do it. And I would say, because it's, again, Saturn in the sign of Aries, be really selfish. Be super selfish about what it is that you need, about maintaining your own self-respect. And if you find, again, that friend is impacting you in a way that you don't like, set those boundaries. And Aries is quite an instinctual sign. So do follow your instincts on this as well. And treat it as a battle. Aries is the sign of the warrior. Treat it as a battle that it needs your time, it needs your attention. And if you don't act now, it's life or death. Aries, the quality of Aries is really going to ask that of us. And I would also say, whether about this friend or about other things that are coming up for you, Angie, during this 2.5-year period, do focus on practical steps. Do focus on, to-do lists. Do focus on setting like very clear goals for the day, for the week. If you need help, for example, with the way you communicate or the way you set boundaries, or maybe with the way you dress yourself, sign up for help with experts. Sign up for a communications class. Sign up maybe for a self-defense class that helps you stand in this Aryan energy. Sign up for a stylist session to really help you align how you dress and show up in the world as well. Really focus on those tangible things for the Saturn in your first house transit. Definitely an important one for you. But yeah, you got this, Angie. I believe in you. I hope that helps. And if you have other questions, drop them in the chat. All right. If you have your rising sign, drop it in the chat, and we'll address that one next. And of course, if you missed the one that we already talked about, this video will also be uploaded on my channel, so you can come later and watch it. Make sure you hit subscribe so that you can find me easier. Okay, then let's move on to Taurus next and talk about Aries in your 12th house. So for Taurus, when Aries transits, when Saturn transits your 12th house, it will make it really obvious that all of your previous achievements and the hard work, the chasing that you've been doing after them, whether a promotion, whether a certain relationship, whether a big house, whether certain friendships, you might see that this chase and this striving after these things has actually been quite childish. And it might ask you to be really mature in your thinking or in you composing this identity of yourself based on your achievements. You know, I am a doctor. I am an owner of this house. I am a resident of this really prestigious community. Saturn will say, well, actually, let's be quite mature about this. We're all humans. Even though you might have these things, you still have some of those hurt parts of you that you had as a child, that were formed as a child. And it might really help you see that being an adult is realizing that everything comes and goes. Just as easily as something has come to us, it can also be taken away from us. I'm being really, really mature about this. And the way that you can approach this transit in your 12th house, I know it doesn't sound the most fun, but the way that you can approach it is by picking up a spiritual routine, whatever that is for you. Maybe journaling, maybe meditation, maybe also going to therapy. I think this the 12th house transit can also represent therapy. But really setting up a structure and something tangible that you do to help you with this Saturn transit. And really focusing on this idea of who are you without these achievements? If you would let everything go, what is left over? Saturn is in Aries, the sign of facing our fears, the sign of being selfish. And therefore, you need to embody these qualities with this transit. You need to face the fears that Saturn is bringing up in you. The fears of, crap, I could lose my job, my house, my relationship, my friends tomorrow. How scary that feels. It will ask you to be selfish with the time that you need to work through this. Be selfish if somebody says, oh, let's go hang out and you have a therapy session planned. No, set the boundaries. Treat that therapy session as life or death, as something that you need to attend. And really set the boundaries with others. Really put your spiritual routine and this exploration as first, as the most important. Next, we'll go to Gemini. And if we haven't talked about your rising sign yet, do drop it down in the chat and we'll address it next. That way you don't need to wait. All right, let's do Gemini then. So for Gemini, Saturn will be transiting your 11th house. It's already in your 11th house for the last 6 days, and maybe you've already noticed a difference. And Saturn is basically going to ask you to start being mature with your priorities, with your goals, and with your network of friends and acquaintances. So, with your priorities, for example, if you have been prioritizing things that maybe seemed a little bit childish, if maybe you have been prioritizing saving for a house, but you're not doing it from a place of good intentions, but rather from like, oh, I want to impress my colleagues, Saturn will make that really clear. If you maybe haven't had focus, if maybe you've had too many priorities, let's continue with the saving example. If you've been saving for 50 things at once, Saturn will give you the clarity that this method is not going to work because you're not going to get anywhere. It's going to take you 100 years to save for everything. And Saturn will say, okay, let's be more realistic about this. Let's have some focus. And of course, we talked about the 11th house is also about our network. So Saturn will make it quite clear for you the certain relationships, the certain friendships you've been keeping around with people that maybe are not as mature as you want to be, with people that maybe are not helping you achieve your goals. And when I say this, I don't want to mean like every friend has to be for a reason, but if you have a goal to again save money for your house, but every time you hang out with this one friend, you all go shopping and you like spend 5 paychecks on that one day, Saturn will say, wait a second, hanging out with this friend is not supporting your goal. Something needs to change here. You need to be mature with the people you hang out with, and you need to be mature with realizing that actually the people we hang out with have a great, great influence on us as well. We become like the 5 most people that we hang out with. I think that's the saying. So the way you can approach all of these things that Saturn is making clear to you is to approach them practically. Make to-do lists, make very, very practical goals. Maybe set up your bank account so that you're actually automatically saving a certain amount every month into your house fund. Maybe set a goal that at least one day a week you go to a networking event, or one day a month that you hang out with a new friend. You expand your horizons. Really, really approaching it practically. And of course, Saturn is in the sign of Aries. So we need to take on these Aries types of qualities for the next 2.5 years. We need to set boundaries with people, and we need to initiate. We need to initiate maybe having a conversation and telling a friend that this is not working for us anymore. We need to initiate a conversation with new people and ask to go grab a coffee. We need to treat our priorities as a battlefield. They are important. We need to be selfish with them. We need to defend them from anyone that tries to take away our time or our resources or tries to sabotage them. Aries says, no, this is important, and I'm going to be selfish about it, and I'm going to look after it and make sure it happens. Next up, let's talk about Cancer. And for Cancer, Saturn is going to be transiting through your 10th house for the next 2.5 years. And with this transit, you're going to be asked to consider whether your public persona is mature, is realistic. We all play a role in public society. That can, I think, most clearly be seen in our jobs, right? We play a role of developer, of janitor, of gardener. of project manager. And with this Saturn in your 10th house transit, you might find that perhaps that role you're playing is not really in line, it's not really respectful towards you, it's not really something that feels aligned to you. And keep in mind that the 10th house doesn't only have to represent her job, even though that's a quite tangible public role that we play. It could be any other ways. Maybe you are seen in the public as an advocator of or an advocate for women's rights, and maybe you realize, hey, does this still align for me? Does something need to change? Or maybe the women's rights still aligns with you, but maybe the way you've been showing up in that area hasn't been exactly aligned. Maybe you want to be more outspoken, you want to be more present. So keep in mind, this doesn't have to be just your job. And if you take practical, tangible steps to address this, you will come out at the end feeling dignified in the role that you have in the community, feeling like you are serving a great purpose. It might feel like you have more responsibility, but it will be a responsibility that you gladly take on because it feels really aligned to you. It feels you feel like you respect yourself based on the role that you play in society. And of course, Saturn is in Aries. This means you have to take on those Aries qualities while you do so. You have to go forward with courage, even though you might be afraid. You might be afraid to tell that group, hey, I'm actually going to stop with this. It doesn't feel aligned with me anymore. You might be afraid to drop that job, say, I need to leave, pick up another job that perhaps pays you less but feels more respectful towards you. Don't be afraid of doing things you're afraid of. Set boundaries. Fight for this like it's life or death. It's really important for you during this Saturn transit. And initiate. Have the conversations. Really take the practical steps to look for and ask around for different groups on different topics that you can be a part of. Initiate conversations about different roles or types of jobs that you might want to do. You really have to be the first one to take the first step with this transit. So I hope that helps, Cancer. If not, do drop your questions down in the chat and I'm happy to answer them. Or if you've just joined and your rising sign hasn't been addressed yet, just drop it in the chat and we'll get to it next. But for now, let's go with Leo. So for Leo, Saturn will be transiting your 9th house, and it's going to be ask you to be mature with your beliefs, with your life philosophy, and the vision of your life. Do you still have beliefs that are maybe a bit childish? This can mean beliefs that are too black and white, like all people that cheat are bad people, or all people that, I'll say something controversial, doesn't mean I am this person, but all people that believe in Trump or voted for Trump are bad people. Any sort of the beliefs that are too black and white, Saturn in your 9th house might challenge that. And it might do so by bringing people in your life that maybe did vote for Trump, or people that are cheaters or have cheated, and make you realize that actually life is a bit more complicated than that, and that your beliefs might be a little bit too black and white. Maybe it's not about that. Maybe your beliefs are sort of childish in the sense that they're too innocent. You might have a belief that everybody has the best interest and will never hurt you. Saturn might bring some people into your life that make you aware that actually sometimes we need to really look out for ourselves, because There's a lot of people out there that want to take advantage of us. So to address all of these things that Saturn is bringing up, you need to do it practically, you need to do it patiently, and you need to do it with self-discipline. How are you going to grow in your beliefs, and how you're going to do that practically? Really, maybe set up a goal of reading one book a month from a different philosopher, signing up for a philosophy class, a philosophy college class. Maybe joining a Facebook group with of somebody that's a different political background than you, or different political beliefs than you. And really allowing yourself the space and the time to non-judgmentally explore what's being shared there, and be open to having your beliefs challenged. Maybe you, with the Saturn transit, you go to places that challenge your beliefs as well. You maybe travel to a conference of, again, somebody from a different, or a conference of a different political view than you, to challenge yourself. Or traveling to a country that perhaps you feel like, okay, I'm not sure I really support the way this government runs things, but let me challenge myself here, and allow yourself to explore and experience these things. Saturn in Aries also says that you have to do these things even if they scare you. You need to be courageous, and do follow your instinct. You might find yourself during this time that you are sort of randomly attracted to very specific things. You're at a bookstore and randomly you're attracted to a certain book. Do listen to those instincts during this time, Leo. You might find that you're randomly at a coffee shop and you see an ad, a poster for a certain college class or certain community class about a philosopher. Do really follow those instincts. They might lead you to the path of really growing in your beliefs. And be selfish. Be selfish with this time to explore, this time that's needed to grow in your beliefs. Be selfish with, if somebody invites you to hang out, but you have a college class during that time, say no. Treat this time to grow your beliefs as something that is of utmost importance. It's a life or death situation. I hope that helps, Leo. And if you have any other questions about Saturn and Aries, drop them down in the chat. So we already talked about Virgo and Libra. So let's move on to Scorpio then. And for Scorpio, Saturn already 6 days ago entered your 6th house. And it's going to stay there for a while, 2.5 years. And it's going to ask you to start being a little bit more mature with your responsibilities and stop viewing them as something that you need to dread. Saturn might give you more responsibilities in this while it's transiting your 6th house, which will sort of alter your reality and will show you that actually a lot of us go through our life having many, many, many responsibilities. And that can feel really discouraging. It can feel really constraining as well. Saturn in your 6th house might also make you aware that there are things that you can improve at. It will remind you to stay humble. It might make it really aware to you, especially if you're somebody that works with your hands or has a craft. You might all of a sudden be super aware of all of the ways that you can improve in your craft and become better at it. So the ways to address this, the ways to address the things that Saturn is bringing up for you, is to put in actual practical routine in place. Sign up for that course where you learn that skill that you feel you're lacking. Have conversations with people in your industry, in your where you work, in the industry that you work with, that you aspire to, that you see them doing things better, and learn for them. Um, See if there's a way to take on or fulfill the responsibilities that you still have while also seeing them as something that gives you a purpose and something that gives you dignity and self respect. If we're taking on the wrong responsibilities, we'll feel discouraged, we'll feel unmotivated for life. But if we take on the right responsibilities for us, of course we'll be tired. Of course we'll feel constrained. Of course we'll want to say, gosh, I wish I could go out for ice cream instead of doing this and this right now. Um, but at the end of the day, we will feel like, wow, I did good work today. I helped somebody out. I fulfilled my responsibilities. I know I helped that person in some way. And I am happy that I have this responsibility on me. With Saturn being in Aries, do take on those Aryan types of qualities to deal with this Saturnian transit. Follow your instinct. If your instinct says certain responsibilities are something you want to drop that don't bring you joy, follow that. See if you can do that. Face any fears you might have around taking responsibility. Be courageous, even though you might be afraid. And fight for this. Fight for the time you need to learn a skill and to become better at something. Set boundaries around it, even if others say, hey, let's hang out. Hey, take a break. Stop working so hard. Um, do treat it as something that's very important, something that's life or death, and be very selfish with that time and discipline that you need around it. I hope that helps, Scorpios. Let me know in the chat if you have any more questions about Saturn and Aries. And now let's move on to Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, Saturn has entered your 5th house about 6 days ago, and it will stay there for a while. It will stay there until April of 2028. So Sagittarius, when Saturn is in your 5th house, it will be time for you to restructure your playfulness and your creativity, and more specifically, your relationship to playfulness and creativity. If you have been viewing self-expression as something childish, like, oh, only kids play. Oh, only kids have coloring books. Saturn will make you see that actually creativity and self-expression is something that's really important in everybody's life, and especially adults with all the responsibilities and things we have on our plate. Or perhaps if you've been quite childish with your self-expression, if you always thought, hey, I have to be drunk or on drugs in order to have fun and to dance and to express myself, to be flirty, Saturn is going to make that really clear to you and say, hey, isn't it time to start viewing self-expression with more dignity? Isn't it time to approach it in a more self-respectful way? Dancing and having fun and flirting, those are wonderful things. Why don't we do it in a way that's dignified and self-respectful? Why don't we do it in a way that doesn't require that we need the entire next day to recuperate from it? And the way you can approach this Saturn transit in your 5th house is to approach it practically. Perhaps schedule 30 minutes of painting every day. Really have a routine set up for yourself. Or ask yourself, for the next 3 months, I'm going to explore one new hobby. Spend a certain amount of money to try out something fun, to try out a new dance club, or even something as structured as, if you're somebody that's dating Sagittarius, even something as practical as having a set of questions that we always want to cover on our dates. Dates, the fifth house, fun and self-expression, and Saturn says, let's make it a bit more structured. Let's bring a little bit more self-respect and dignity to it. And of course, because Saturn is in Aries, while it is in your fifth house, you do have to take on these Aries qualities for the next couple of years. Treat this with selfishness. Be selfish about the fact that you need your creative time. You need to express yourself, whether through dancing or through the way you talk or the way you dress. Also, follow your instinct during this time. If you are on a date and you have a specific instinct to ask the person opposite from you, the person you're on a date with, a specific question, follow that instinct. Do initiate during this time. Initiate conversations with new people, initiate spending money on new topics, initiate or new hobbies, initiate signing up for new fun things, initiate. That's really important for this Saturn and Aries transit. But overall, Sagittarius, let's make self-expression, playfulness, creativity something that's a bit more structured, something that's a bit more dignified and brings respect to you, not something that you're ashamed of or something that you think, only children do. I hope that helps, Sagittarius. If you have questions, let me know in the chat. And if you're just joining, we have Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces left. We might have already covered your sign. So do click subscribe. This video will be uploaded once the live is finished. Then you can quite easily find it back and look back to your rising sign. And otherwise, if you have any specific Saturn and Aries questions, drop them down in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. Okay, let's move on to Capricorn. And Capricorn, Saturn will be transiting your fourth house, which means that until April 2028, it will be time for some deep self-analysis of your feelings. For example, if you have been a bit immature with how you've been viewing your upbringing or your parents, maybe thinking that, they could have done better. The way they raised me wasn't proper or right. Of course, within reason, this can definitely be true for many of us. But Saturn might make you start to see reality, might make you see that, wait a second, my parents were actually struggling with certain things while I was growing up. You start to realize the reality that they were going through, and you start to see, actually, I kind of understand now maybe why my parents were upset all the time and why they were cranky at the end of the day. Saturn will ask you to start viewing your upbringing, your family, your ancestors, your parents with more respect and dignity. Starting to see the reality of how difficult it might have been also for them in the situations they were put into. The fourth house is also the foundation of how we're feeling today as well. And you might become super aware with Saturn there that actually a lot of how we act today, a lot of how we feel today is based on our upbringing and the way our upbringing shaped us into who we are today. So you might start to realize, oh, wait a second, that thing I do over there where I don't speak up, that's actually coming because my mother and my father did this when I was growing up. Because this is quite an introspective house, the fourth house Capricorn, Saturn will ask you to work hard to be self-disciplined with your inner work and to actually take practical steps. Maybe participating in, I think it's called family constellations. It's this interesting practice where you get to think about um, certain habits that you might have today and how your upbringing may have contributed to them. Sign up for something like that. Sign up for therapy. It might also really just be putting in a schedule for ourselves where every Sunday we call our mother. Every Sunday we talk to our parents. This is the house of our home. So it might be setting a routine. If you're somebody that doesn't feel comfortable spending time at home, spending time alone in this quiet, confined space, you might need to really set a regime. Every day I'm going to have 30 minutes of alone time in my home. No talking to people, not being on the phone, not having something playing in the background, not busy doing something else. And as I've been sharing with all the signs, you do really need to take on these Aries qualities for the next 2.5 years, which means protect your boundaries. See this theme as something you need to fight for, something of utmost importance. And be courageous. Even if it feels like something you're afraid of, you're afraid to do it, do be courageous and do the work. Okay, let's move on to Aquarius. And finally, we'll talk about Pisces. So for Aquarius, Saturn will be transiting your third house. It's already in your third house, got there 6 days ago. And it's going to stay there until April 2028. It's going to ask you to be mature with how you gather your information. Do you perhaps focus too much on gossip in a practice that you might not feel very dignified about, or you might not feel like it's showing you self-respect when you practice it? Are you somebody that perhaps gathers their information only from the same source and is not open to different sources, different viewpoints on the same topic? Or are you somebody that's maybe even like living in La La Land and never actually is on top of any information? Never reads news sources, never reads articles or newspapers? Saturn is going to ask you to approach this practically. If you're somebody that has an overload of information, Saturn will say, let's become a little bit mature about that and let's constrain ourselves with it. So you might set yourself a goal or, like a boundary of, okay, I have 3 outlets, this news show, this YouTube channel, and this newspaper, and those are the only ones that I am ingesting for the next couple of months. If you're somebody that you find social media is not something that brings you self-respect and dignity, set really practical things. Maybe set a limit on your phone of, after 30 minutes of Instagram, I'm locked out. If you are somebody that talks too much and shares too much instead of listening just as much, maybe really setting like a practical thing for yourself where you share 1 sentence per every 4 that somebody else shares. Really, it's uncomfortable, of course. It sounds super strange to do, but Saturn might ask that of you. It might say, let's do something practical to address the fact that we should listen a little bit more than we speak sometimes. Don't forget to embody these Aries qualities, Aquarius. This means be courageous. If you're afraid to delete your social media apps, do it. It's the Aries quality. We're doing things that we're afraid of and we're being courageous with it. Treat this as the most important battle If you don't do this, it's life or death. It's not as simple as, oh, well, I just have the radio on in the background while I'm doing literally everything. Really see this as a life or death situation, and you need to take action. And also follow your instincts, Aquarius. Aries is quite an instinctual sign. So if you have an instinct of, well, actually, it's not Instagram that's really a problem. Actually, for me, it's the fact that whatever. It's another one. It's Facebook. Or, oh, for me, the problem is the fact that I always have YouTube in the background. Follow your instincts, and what your instincts are telling you you could improve, or what your instincts are telling you is the information source that's not serving you, because most likely your instincts will lead you in the right direction. I hope that helps, Aquarius. So we have one more to go, which is Pisces. If we have gone through your rising sign already, make sure you subscribe. Come back after the live is over a little bit later today, and you can find your specific rising sign and watch it back. And in the meantime, while you have me here, you can always drop Saturn and Aries questions in the live chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. But let's go through Pisces. And for Pisces, Saturn has entered your second house. It did that on May 25th, and it's going to stay there until April of 2028. It's going to ask you to start doing the things that you promised yourself you would do. You promised yourself you would start getting up at 6 a.m. You promised yourself that you would stop sitting on the couch after work. You promised yourself that you would start working out 3 times a week. Saturn is going to say it's time to start showing up for ourselves, to treat ourselves with self-respect, to not lie to ourselves. And if you have been having trouble sticking through with your decisions, if you have had trouble making a decision that you're going to do something, maybe you're going to cut off a friend, or you're going to end a relationship, or you're going to change your job, but you haven't done it yet. And in a way, you are disrespecting yourself in that process. You're staying in a relationship that's not serving you, in a friendship that's not serving you. You're in a job that feels disrespectful to you all the time. Saturn will make that reality super obvious. And the way that you can work with this Saturn transit is be self-disciplined and be very, very, very practical about it. Set timers for yourself. 30 minutes every day, I'm going to read that nonfiction book. Sign up for the course to learn that new skill. If you've told yourself, okay, I'm going to be somebody that's going to start working out, do so. Maybe sign up for a personal trainer. Again, something practical, something tangible. Maybe you pay the personal trainer. It's sort of like an extra step that forces you to show up. Anything, especially I think with this transit, if it involves money and the betterment of yourself, Saturn will really like it that you're sort of honoring yourself in that way. You're honoring yourself by paying money and investing into yourself. Class to learn something new, buying a book to expand your knowledge, using the money to take care of yourself, like a workout class or booking a massage for yourself. Saturn will really honor that in a good way. And of course, this is Aries we're talking about. Saturn is in the sign of Aries. So do see this as a fight that you need to win. Follow your instincts. If your instinct says, hey, I feel like I need a massage, or hey, I feel like I need to go dancing, or hey, today instead of a really difficult high intensity workout class, I need a gentle yoga class. So do follow those instincts. And of course, the Aries archetypes ask us to be courageous. So do face your fears, even if it feels scary to do so. It feels scary to invest in yourself, to spend your money that way. Do go ahead and do it. Aries, the archetype of Aries, is all about facing our fears, finding the battles that are worth fighting for, and then basically fighting for them. And I think that's a really nice way to end off this live. As I shared, Saturn is already in Aries. It's already in the house that we've mentioned for you specifically. So you might already see these themes coming up. Keep in mind that it will start going retrograde quite soon in July. And it will retrograde all the way back into Pisces. So somewhere this year, you might find that you're closing off those Pisces themes. And from, I believe, somewhere in December, maybe even January, once Aries is back into Pisces, or sorry, once Saturn is back into Aries, it should be full on, head on with these themes. I hope this live is helpful. It will be uploaded on my channel quite soon, so make sure you subscribe so that you can find it back and watch through it again. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I hope you have the best Saturn in Aries transit. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy your Saturday as well.